travelers, and monster catchers abound. I'm Stella Ferris, and this is a Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Today, I will talk about some glyphs I caught in the worlds that reside in Pulsar Pocket. Here's a little to note about the planets in the pocket. So the first world I want to talk about is called Nesquar, and it's a planet bathed in eerie purple and blue light from a nearby pulsar with shifting magnetic storms. So, the second one is called Xiphos. It's a jagged, iron-rich world where razor-sharp mountains rise above deep, glowing lava seas. So, this third one I want to talk about is called Glyphs, and it's a rogue planet that occasionally vanishes from sight, cloaked by an unpredictable gravitational field. So, we only get to see this planet every 5 years because it disappears in and out of our galaxy. The fourth world I want to talk about is called Velmora. It's a super Earth with an atmosphere thick with charged particles, causing auroras to dance endlessly. The fifth world I want to talk about is called Threxus. It's a hollow planet with an ancient artificial core that emits radio signals of unknown origin. The next one I want to talk about is called Oblavara. It's a frozen wasteland on the surface, but underneath, vast underground cities thrive beneath the caves. The next one I want to talk about is Xarion. It's a world of perpetual twilight where a dim red sun keeps the sky in an eternal state of dusk, much like the ice planet in the Nova Pocket. It's also good to note that I caught 2 glyphs from each of these worlds, and today I will tell the stories that shaped my adventures in the Pulsar Pocket. Without further interruption, let's get into my stories. So, the Anado Desert stretched endlessly before me, its dunes rising and falling like frozen waves of golden sand. The heat was relentless, but it wasn't the scorching sun that sent shivers down my spine. It was the whispers. I had come here searching for Kaibor, the legendary guardian of forgotten souls. Stories of vanishing travelers, flickering shadows, and ancient voices calling from beneath the dunes had drawn me here. The echoing tombs were said to be his domain, but Kaibor did not simply reveal himself to anyone. The only way to find him was to prove myself worthy. After hours of trekking across the shifting sands, I came to a place that felt different. The wind, which had been howling all day, suddenly died down, leaving only an unsettling silence. Before me lay rows of small, square sand graves, each one perfectly aligned as if untouched by time, ancient burials long forgotten by the living. As I stepped forward, I felt the air grow heavy. My breath came in shallow gasps as a deep, unworldly hum vibrated through the sand. Then I saw it, Kaibor. He hovered just beyond the graves, his jackal-like form wrapped in shifting shadows, his 4 spectral arms phasing in and out of existence. His cayenne eyes burned like twin embers of lost souls, unreadable and ancient. But what chilled me to the core was his glowing belly, or rather what was inside it. Shapes swirled beneath his obsidian armor, their forms pressing against the surface like spirits trapped in amber. Faces flickered in and out of existence, their hollow eyes pleading, their mouths forming silent screams. Kaibor wasn't just a guardian, he was a prison for souls that could not move on, and I had come to catch him. Kaibor did not attack, he simply watched, his spectral arms weaving through the air like tendrils of black ink dissolving into water. The runes on his body shifted, whispering in a long, dead language. Then a chorus of voices, layered upon one another, speaking directly into my mind. What do you seek, traveler? My hands trembled, but I stood firm, to free those who cannot move on. Silence, then. A sound not quite a growl, not quite a sigh, but something deep and ancient. Then prove yourself. The sand beneath me shuddered, and suddenly the graves around me began to open. Ghostly hands emerged, pulling themselves free, their translucent forms glowing a faint blue. The forgotten souls of the echoing tombs that had awakened. Kaibor would not surrender without a trial. The spirits circled me, whispering fragments of their past lives, their hollow gaze testing my resolve. One was a warrior clutching the phantom remains of a rusted spear. Another a scribe, her fingers still moving as if writing words in the air. A third a child, her eyes filled with confusion, as if she had not understood why she had been left here for so long. Kaibor raised a spectral arm, and the spirits lunged at me, but I did not run, and I did not fight. Instead, I reached into my satchel and pulled out one thing that could help me pass Kaibor's test, the words of remembrance. The incantation was written in the ancient language of the Nibirans, passed down only through scholars and spirit guides. I had memorized it, knowing that if Kaibor was truly the guardian of these lost souls, he would recognize it, in it alone. Taking a deep breath, I spoke. By the stars that burn and fade, by the winds that whisper names, let the lost be seen, let the forgotten be heard, and let their journey not end in shadows. The spirits froze, their glowing forms trembled, as if something long buried had begun to surface. The whispers shifted, no longer fragmented cries, but something gentler, almost peaceful. Kaibor let out a low guttural breath, his cayenne eyes locking on mine. For the first time, he hesitated, his spectral arms folding inward, and the glyphs on his body dimmed, their whispers growing faint. The glow in his belly subsided, as if the souls trapped within him had finally been acknowledged. Then Kaibor spoke, not in the layered, many-voiced tone from before, but in one single voice, deep and sorrowful. You are worthy. His form began to shift, his misty lower half dissolving into tendrils of dark light. As he moved closer, slowly, almost reluctantly, he lowered his head in recognition. I reached out, feeling the weight of his ancient presence pressing against my palm, and then a pulse of energy surged through the air. The spectral chains around the souls broke, their faint outlines fading into the ether, finally free. Kaibor let out a deep exhale, his once tormented form calming as the corruption that had bound him weakened. The sand beneath me stilled. The echoing tombs returned silence. Then, as if accepting his fate, Kaibor's form condensed into glyphic energy, swirling into my glyphid, its black and gold glow sealing his presence within. The echoing tombs were quiet now. The 4 graves had closed, the spirits had moved on, and Kaibor, once a lost guardian, now my glyph, rested inside my captured device, my glyphid. But I knew this wasn't the end of Kaibor's story. He had tested me, but the real journey was just beginning. He was still bound to Nibiru, his fate still tied to the veil of eternity. The question was, could I help him find his true purpose again? Or was he forever doomed to be the guardian of the forgotten souls? Only time would tell. So this next story I want to tell you guys is a story of rivalry between me and Raine. So she was named after the Nova Pocket because that's what her parents liked. But anyways, she comes from the Nova Pocket actually. So the crisp air carried the scent of bioluminescent moss and the faint metallic tang of charged aether through the towering spires of Luan Academy. The twin suns bathed the academy courtyard in golden light, casting long shadows against the polished stone pathways. I sat at my usual spot under the silentwood tree, enjoying what little peace lunchtime offered. My aura beak rested beside me, its gleaming golden shell catching the shifting light as it clicked its broad, duck-like beak. Then, to my surprise, I heard it. That high-pitched, nasally voice that sent a shiver down my spine every time it cut through the air, like a poorly tuned screech worm. "Oh, look, girls, it's Smelly Sally," Raine said to me. I sighed, already regretting whatever was about to unfold. I turned my gaze upward, meeting her smug expression as she strutted across the courtyard with her usual entourage of sycophants trailing behind like lost moons orbiting a dying star. Nova flipped her silver hair over her shoulder, the strands glimmering under the academy's floating lanterns. She placed a hand on her hip, her neon-painted nails glinting like the sharpened edges of a sky serpent's scales. "Look, Quasar. Put up or shut up. Battle me. I bet that aura beak of you rave about couldn't hold a candle to my Screechmire." I blinked, caught off guard. Screechmire? I had never heard of a glyph like that, or by that name before, and considering how much time I spent studying and catching glyphs, that was saying something. My fingers tensed around my bag and instinctively protective of Orbeek's glyph inside. Nova's smirk grew into something more sinister, her sharp, bird-like features twisting into a grotesque mockery of amusement. "Oh," she cooed, leaning in slightly, her piercing violet eyes glinting with mischief. Is little Miss Smartypants at a loss for words? Don't tell me you've never heard of Screechmire. How embarrassing for you. Her lackeys giggled, covering their mouths like they were witnessing some great scandal. I pushed myself to my feet, brushing the dust from my coat. I don't need to know what it is to beat it, you know. The crowd around us gasped in delight. Luon Academy students loved a good battle, and rivalries were their favorite source of entertainment. Nova tilted her head, her smirk unwavering. Big words, Quasar. Let's see if you can back them up. I reached into my bag and pulled out Orbeek's glyphid, a sleek triangular device with shifting celestial symbols carved into its surface. Kneeling, I carefully placed it onto the stone ground. The moment it touched down, golden veins of light traced upwards and out, responding to the presence of a known glyph inside. I tapped the center, causing the device to hum softly as it calibrated. With a sharp press to the activation rune, the glyphid pulsed, its outer symbols rotating into place. The familiar prismatic energy surged forward, and in a burst of shimmering gold, Orbeek materialized. A metallic clatter rang through the courtyard as my glyphid landed, its 6 golden legs skittering across the stone, Orbeek's polished exoskeleton shimmering under the Academy's lanterns. Intricate cosmic etchings glowing faintly along its shell. It let out a low, resonant honk from its broad, duck-like beak, its compound eyes locking on to Nova. She grinned wickedly and pulled her own glyphid from her bag. But unlike mine, hers had a dark, flickering core. Nova knelt, pressing the glyphid to the ground with exaggerated care, her smirk widening as she adjusted the settings. You see, Stelly, she purred, when you register a new glyph you've never caught before, it takes longer to stabilize. A second rune flared to life separate from the first, unlike mine, which was attuned to Orbeek. Nova's glyphid required a moment to process its unfamiliar data. She twisted the calibration dial, ensuring the device adjusted for an uncaught creature. Then she pressed the final rune. The moment it activated, an unnatural wail split the air. A wave of discordant screeches ripples through the courtyard, making the air feel thick with an unseen weight. The twin calibration sigils flickered violently, struggling to contain what was being summoned. The light dissipated, revealing the creature unlike anything I had ever seen before. Screechmire was a nightmarish amalgamation of shadow and decay, its elongated talons clutched at the air, its wings appearing more like shredded parchment laced with writhing, ink-black veins. Its face was featureless, save for the jagged beak that opened far too wide, releasing an eerie hum that made my vision blur at the edge. Orbeek clacked its beak, its golden shell pulsing as it adjusted its stance. I clenched my fists. This wasn't going to be easy. Let's do this, Orbeek. The battle had begun. A hush fell over the courtyard as the tension thickened like an approaching storm. My heart pounded, but I kept my stance firm, eyes locked onto the eerie form of Screechmire. The very air around it seemed to distort, waves of static flickering across its body like an unstable signal. Orbeek clacked its broad beak again, lowering its stance as the golden etchings along its shell pulsed with steady energy. Despite Screechmire's unsettling presence, my glyph stood its ground. It had faced the unknown before, and it wouldn't falter now. Nova crossed her arms, a smug grin stretching across her face. Oh, you're already sweating, Quasar. Maybe we should call this off before your Orbeek embarrasses itself. I rolled my eyes, hiding the way my pulse quickened. You're stalling, Nova. I think you're the one who's nervous. Her expression twitched for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to catch it. But then she tossed her head back with a laugh. Please, she scoffed. Screechmire doesn't lose. Her voice carried an unsettling confidence. Did she already have a strategy? I didn't have time to dwell on it. Nova flicked her wrist, ensuing the first move. Screechmire dissonance fell. A sickening pulse of shadow rippled onward from Screechmire's form. Its body shuddered, warping like a mirage, becoming translucent and fragmented. The courtyard itself seemed to twist in response, the edges of buildings bending as if they were caught in a heat wave. My stomach lurched. Dissonance fell wasn't just an evasive move. It was destabilizing the entire battlefield. Orabeak, stay sharp, I called out, but my glyph was already preparing, its 6 golden legs anchored against the courtyard stone, shell gleaming brighter as it registered the disorienting effects of the attack. Solar surge! A deep hum resonated from Orabeak's core as the celestial markings along its shell brightened into brilliant gold. Then, in a sudden burst, a concentrated beam of pure solar energy blasted towards Screechmire, tearing through the disoriented air. For a moment, it looked like a direct hit until the beam passed straight through Screechmire's flickering body. Nova smirked. Tisk tisk. Forgot about the Vel, Stelly. Screechmire's form solidified again, just as it lunged forward, its long jagged talons stretched toward Orabeak. Shadow Rend. Screechmire's claws tore through the air, leaving behind tendrils of black vapor. The attack struck Orabeak's shell, sending my glyph skidding back across the courtyard with a metallic scrape. Sparks of golden energy rippled from the point of impact, but Orabeak quickly righted itself, shaking off the residual damage. I narrowed my eyes. That attack had force, but it wasn't a direct hit. Not bad, I admitted, but you're underestimating Orabeak's defenses. Nova shrugged, tapping her chin in mock thought. Maybe. Or maybe Screechmire is just getting warmed up. I gritted my teeth. I needed a new approach. Direct attacks would not work while Screechmire was using Dissonance Fell, and I couldn't afford to waste another solar surge. I had to trap it. Taking a deep breath, I adjusted my stance. Orabeak, luminous web. My glyph skidded forward, raising its beak toward the sky. Its golden shell pulsed rapidly. Then from its core, fine strands of golden silk shot onward in a wild net. The radiant threads hovered for a second before hurtling downward towards Screechmire. Nova's expression faltered. The threads weren't aiming for Screechmire itself. They were aimed at the ground around it. Before Nova could react, the web latched onto the courtyard stone, forming a glowing perimeter around Screechmire. The instant its warping body touched the luminous strands, a crackling snap of energy locked it in place. Nova's eyes widened. Wait! Solar surge, now, I command! Orabeak honked triumphantly and fired another concentrated blast of celestial energy. This time, Screechmire had nowhere to phase Dissonance Vel, couldn't function while surrounded by a stable energy field. The blast struck Screechmire dead on. A burst of golden light illuminated the courtyard as the impact sent a shockwave rippling through the arena. Students gasped, shielding their eyes as Screechmire screeched in pain, its flickering form struggling against the energy binding it. Nova took a step back, her hands balling into fists. I smirked. Still think I'm the one who should be nervous? Nova growled under her breath, then with a wicked glint in her eye, snapped her fingers. Phase shift. The moment she spoke, Screechmire melted, its body collapsed into an inky puddle that slithered out of the luminous web's trap before reforming several feet away. I tensed. She still had tricks up her sleeve. Nova smirked, regaining her confidence. Not bad, Quasar, but now it's my turn. Screechmire, abysmal howl. A chill ran down my spine. Screechmire arched its neck, its featureless face stretched open. A guttural, haunting wail erupted from its jagged beak, the sound vibrating through my bones. The very air in the courtyard darkened, and I felt Orabeak stiffen beside me. This wasn't just an attack, it was a deliberating effect. Nova crossed her arms, grinning like a victor. Good luck commanding Orabeak when it can't even move. I clenched my fist. She was trying to paralyze us, but I wasn't about to let Nova win that easily. Taking a deep breath, I focused on Orabeak's glowing etchings. They flickered, dimming under the weight of Screechmeyer's oppressive howl. Then I realized Orabeak's cosmic energy wasn't just light, it was also sound. I smiled. Nova, I said slowly, you forget something important about my glyphs. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? I met her gaze with confidence. Orabeak isn't just a celestial glyph, it's a resonance glyph. Nova's smirk faltered. Orabeak. Harmonic reverb. With the final pulse of its golden shell, Orabeak let out a powerful, echoing honk, one that cut through the unnatural well of Screechmeyer's like a blade through mist. The courtyard vibrated, the oppressive darkness dissipating as Orabeak's sound waves reverberated across the stone. Screechmeyer stumbled, its body flickering wildly as if struggling to stay cohesive. Nova took a step back, eyes widening. I grinned. Your move, Raine. Nova pulled her glyph from the flight. She may be a bully, but there is one thing we have in common. We both love our glyphs. You're lucky, Smelly Stelly. I know when to give up. But when I see you next time, I will win, Nova said to me. Keep telling yourself that, Raine, I said as me and Orabeak walked over and sat down to finish our lunch. Nova and her entourage sauntered out of the cafeteria, and one of my favorite professors walked in with his familiar glyph. Everyone gets one, and his is a long neck. He solved a really tricky riddle to earn his glyph's love and respect. He didn't say anything to me. I think he just didn't see me, but I was happy. I wanted to finish my Crimson Heart sandwich. I walked out of the lunchroom happy and excited. On that day, I gained a new rival. She was always a try-hard because I am better at glyph catching than her. I know, that might sound a little presumptuous, but, it's true. Now, let's talk about the time when I was 11 years old. There was a mystery going around Nibiru. Most places like Terraformia took this mystery very seriously. There was talk of a dark and mysterious glyph that took children in the night and never returned them. I never believed it. What kind of glyph would kidnap children, right? I found out that night I was wrong. He was 4 foot tall, with a large horn coming from his head that looked like a TV dish on your planet, Earth. He had a cat-like eyes that were dark orange, and where the white is supposed to be, it was dark black. His body was able to contort in many different ways. I was so afraid I kept the blanket over my head, thinking he wouldn't notice me. But he grabbed me by my foot and dragged me from my bed. I don't know if it was pure terror or the need to catch every glyph I see, but I quickly grabbed out a glyph, placed it, and said it. His name in hieroglyphics was suddenly imprinted on his side in that moment. He thrashed and clawed in my direction, hissing and screeching in an almost visceral way. The glyph couldn't fight the pull of my glyphit, and it pulled him in. I had caught the ever-elusive and bone-chilling glyph that we called the Vanishing. I know this is a short story, but it's one for the books. I'm still just as terrified of him today as I was that day when he tried to steal me. The next story I want to tell you is about a glyph of mystery. He is shrouded in legend all over Nibiru, from Terraformia all the way to Rest Haven. All who knows this glyph run in terror. All who encounter him have never been the same again. He's known as the tombinger. The tombinger disorients you, bringing you to a place of endless graves, where light shines but the sky is darker than night, with no reflections to help you out. This move is called Grave Trap, so be careful or he'll throw you in a hole where your soul will stay for all of eternity. Tombinger is native to graveyards, and he is hard to catch. He's ever elusive and mind-binding, so that night in particular, I staked out the graveyard. I knew I had to leave before 12 or be lost forever. I walked for a few feet until I heard it, a floating ghostly gravestone with animal ears. It was Tombinger. I called out Orabeak, and while he was distracting Tombinger, I placed my glyphit and set it. It took a while, but the bright light eventually swallowed the Tombinger. He was caught, and I put him in my sanctuary at home with the rest of my glyphs. So, I have one last story to tell you guys, and this is about the battle for the last stardust muffin. The cafeteria at Luon Academy was always buzzing with energy, but today it felt like a war zone. The air crackled with tension as I stood locked in a silent standoff with Nova Raine, my rival from the Nova Pocket. Between us, perched on a silvery tray, was the last stardust muffin, a legendary treat only baked once a month. Its midnight blue glaze shimmering with cosmic dust, the scent alone making my mouth water. Nova crossed her arms, her silver hair catching the glow of the two suns shining through the high stained glass window. Give it up, Stelly. You know I deserve it more. I scoffed. Deserve it? Since when do cosmic blessings dictate cafeteria rules? My hands hovered over my glyphs, my grip tightening on the shimmering device at my belt. Besides, you got the last one last month. Nova grinned. Survival of the fittest, Stelly. And right now, I'm fitter. A little growl rumbled at my side. Shadow Claw. My shadow beast. Flicking its tail, the dark wisp of its ghostly form curling around its skeletal paws. From the other side, Orabeak, my radiant avian warrior, flapped its golden wings, already sensing a battle brewing. Nova raised a brow. Oh, we're doing this now. She tapped her own glyph, releasing Void Fang, her sleek jet-black serpent with glowing violet runes along its length. It coiled in midair, flicking its forked tongue, eyeing the muffin with as much hunger as we did. A cafeteria battle wasn't technically allowed, but no one was stopping us either. Students gathered in a circle, whispering bets on who would win. Even Professor Orion lingered at the back, sipping his tea, clearly entertained. Fine, I said, cracking my knuckles. Winner gets the muffin. Nova smirked, tried to keep up. Shadow Claw, Night Bell! Shadow Claw darted forward, its smoky form vanishing into the floor like a living shadow. It reappeared behind Void Fang, swiping at its glowing runes with claws infused with pure darkness. But Nova was fast. Void Fang, Dimensional Coil. Void Fang twisted midair, shifting between realms in a spiraling loop of dark energy. The attack completely bypassed Shadow Claw's strike, and before I could react, the serpent wrapped around Orabeak, pinning my golden scarab in a crushing hold. Orabeak squawked in defiance, golden feathers flaring as it used solar refractor. A burst of blinding light erupted, forcing Void Fang to loosen its grip. Nova showed her eyes. Cheap trick. All's fair, I grinned, but then disaster. While we were locked in battle, a third figure swooped in from the shadows, a mischievous blur of fur and flickering blue fire. Lumapup. My own mischievous ghostly wolf pup leapt onto the cafeteria tray, snatching the stardust muffin in its mouth before either of us could react. Nova and I froze. We watched in horror as Lumapup, completely unaware of the cosmic level of war we had just waged, pranced around the battlefield, munching happily on the very thing we were fighting over. The crowd burst into laughter. Even Professor Orion let out an amused chuckle. Nova groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. I hate you. I sighed, watching Lumapup, licking the crumbs off its glowing paws. I hate me too. I realized there's something from the story I need to clarify because I accidentally said blue. His paws are not blue. I mean, he's a green angel pup. So that's what color he really is. But anyways, let's get back to the story. Nova and I sat in the wreckage of our battle, cafeteria trays overturned, glyphs exhausted. The muffin was gone. But at least we had a new story to tell. She nudged my shoulder. You know we have to do this again next month, right? I smirked. Oh, definitely. Next time, I'm bringing backup. As if on cue, Lumapup let out a happy burp, tiny cosmic sparkles escaping its mouth. So moral of the story is, never turn your back on a hungry ghost wolf. And now, with that being said, travelers and monster catchers abound, and fellow explorers, brings us to the end of another entry in the Monster Catcher's Journal. The hunt never truly ends, and neither do the stories waiting to be told. Somewhere in the vast expanse of Nibiru, new glyphs stir, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be caught. Until next time, keep your glyphs charged, your wits sharp, and your heart open to the mysteries of the cosmos. The monster catcher's path is never easy, but the adventure, it's always worth it. The next legend is waiting. Will you be the one to find it?